Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to yet another episode of Is It a Real Classic, a podcast about movies and TV shows where a bunch of well-versed folks come together and answer that age-old movie debate about what makes a classic. I am your host, of course, Lit Nick. With me today is John Wick Jared, Cobra Kai KP, and Bad Times with the L Justine. Everybody say hello.
Sweep the leg.
Hello. Hola.
All right, Jared.
Hello.
Oh, there we go. Say it like you just gonna. I give you the
I was just
first name.
I got caught up. Yeah, I got caught up in the sweep the leg comment. I was like, that wasn't in Cobra. Yeah, but never mind. No. Yeah.
You know, Cobra Kai is coming to Netflix, so we could do that and like talk about that. But that's not what we're here to talk about today. Today we're going to talk about the original 1992 film Candyman. Now, for context, the film is loosely based on a short story by Clive Barker of Hellraiser fame that centers around Helen Lyle as she investigates an urban legend called Candyman, which is a Bloody Mary-like entity that appears to be terrorizing the housing projects in Cabrini Green, Chicago. However, once she begins to investigate these strange characters, she realizes she's got a lot more than she bargained for when the evil entity known as Candyman starts to terrorize her and tear her apart sanity-wise, anyway. But yeah, that's all the context we really need for this one. This is going to be much easier to talk about than Watchmen. So let's just start off talking about what we all thought of the movie. Anyone can jump in here. What do we think?
I'll go ahead and start.
Go ahead.
I thought the movie was really good, and I do want to give a quick shout out because it'll be kind of the meat and potatoes of my argument for a classic is the acting job and voice of Tony Todd, who played the Candyman, and the score.
The score.
Because those two things were wow. Tony Todd really is just such a presence. Just every second he's on the screen or he's talking, it's enthralling. It's so good.
The screen presence that he has is really impressive when you consider he was the second choice to play Candyman. The first choice was Eddie Murphy.
Wow.
Which would have been a much different movie.
And let me say, what they were going for, not as good.
Yeah, Tony Todd is like one of the most unsung heroes in all of acting, in my opinion. And this is like... This is his performance that he really makes his own and that he's remembered for. And this is one of the reasons why he is one of the... Like, next to Bruce Campbell, one of the big, like, underground names of horror. Where, like, people who are in horror know this guy. But people outside of horror don't really know why he's so respected in the community as being like one of the best of the best. And also, to back up the score thing, fun fact about this movie, it is my favorite film score. Full disclosure. Like, I am a big fan of Ennio Morricone, I'm a fan of John Williams, which is the next guy, but what Philip Glass was able to do with just an organ, a piano, and a choir is haunting. And it is, like, every bit of this music just like seeps into your soul in a way. Like you can just they even use the main theme, which is called "It Was Always You, Helen," in the I want to say Asylum season of American Horror Story, because it's just that much of this really classically almost gothic piece of music. And I'll get into more detail about that a little bit later, but we'll just keep going. Mr. Justin, what did you think of the Candyman?
Oh, I saw it when it first came out. So I got, it's a little bit of an older movie, but it was such a great. Like you said, Tony Todd reminds me a lot of a Dracula, more than he is your usual trope horror villain. He has, he's charismatic, but terrifying at the same time. And that's hard to do.
Yeah, that again, like we gotta give 100% the props to why this movie works to Tony Todd and just a bunch of other things, and I'm really glad you made that Dracula comparison, because I will. Ooh, you have no idea how much I agree with that. All right, KP.
I this movie is a little out of my comfort zone, but I was overwhelmed by the performance of Virginia Madsen as well.
Mm-hmm.
She, I mean, well, there's no reason to keep piggybacking on the Candyman and how great he was, but she, the whole first part of the movie where she's diving in and can't resist herself and continues to want to find out more in how that winds up being, the worst thing that she possibly could have done is pretty intense. She's very good in this, and I enjoyed it very much.
Yeah, like Virginia Madsen, we shouldn't probably forget about how important her whole role in this whole thing is, because without her, this whole movie would have also fallen apart. You know?
Because she is a formidable foe.
Yeah, she is. It's really interesting because the movie really is split in two, where the first half is more of this like mystery thriller about someone like investigating this urban legend in the housing projects, and then the second half goes full on slasher and Dracula, where you have the reality and fantasy starting to fade away as you don't really know what's going on. And more props to Virginia Madsen because I figured this out while I was researching a little bit for the movie, and the part where Candyman has her under his control on the set, legitimately, she was being hypnotized because the director really wanted to get the point across, so he had her hypnotized during those scenes. So if she looks
Oh
like she's
wow!
out of it, she was actually out of it. And that is commitment. That is commitment. Let me tell you. Uh,
Right, right.
yeah, but we should
That's
probably,
commit.
yeah, it's crazy. But we should probably talk about like how the movie is really split into two, and then we should probably talk about the big elephant in the room, which is the setting, which is a big part of the social commentary and commentary in general of what the movie's trying to make. But of course, we have our first half, which, like I said, was the mystery thriller. What did we think about that? Where like the first half of the movie, we don't really even see Candyman. We like hear about him. We see the little sweet on like the walls of everything, and then the grand reveal of what we think is Candyman is actually just a gangster kingpin using the moniker. Because I wasn't expecting that when I was first watching it. I was expecting it to just like lean into the supernatural stuff, but no, it just like no, it's just a gangster uses the name. You
It's
know.
a much smarter tactic.
Hmm.
The monster's always scary when it's off screen.
Yeah, most.
Absolutely. Yeah, 100%. He doesn't show up till like an hour in the movie, but it's building tension the whole time. And you think like, oh man, it was just a guy, and then it's not. You know?
Yeah, like it also plays with the idea of what urban legends are, and also like what we think of when we think of urban legends. Because usually, like, again, this is very inspired by stuff like Bloody Mary and The Hook and all these like little bedtime stories you kind of like get nightmares from talking about. And so it kind of shows how rumors have this strong power over people, especially in this specific community. They decided to shoot him, which is Cabrini Green, and I've been talking about it, so I might as well just talk about it. Is anyone here familiar with Cabrini Green at all?
Oh yeah, Green Green is like notorious. Again,
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of something me and Kevin kind of grew up. Cabrini Green was like when you read about urban crime, that's like one of those test. You know, the places that everybody talks about because it was terrible for the poor people stuff there. For the police that didn't pay attention to it,
Mm-hmm.
and it was like another country inside of the United States, just about because you couldn't get in or out without
It
going.
was a prison in a lot of ways because they literally had bars, if I remember correctly from my research, where they put like so that way people weren't thrown off the side of the building on the upper floors. They put chains around it, or not chains around, but fences around it.
Oh yeah, there's some good. They had a show called Gangland a while ago that went through different street gangs and their history, and several of them started and went through Cabrini Green. And when they talk about that stuff there, you got a real sense of how you know it was an urban war zone.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and it was largely ignored. And those, the good people were left.
Yeah, and it really like using that specific environment because the original short story wasn't set in Cabrini Green when Clive Barker wrote it. It was in Britain. Bernard Rose wanted to move it to Cabrini Green for several different reasons, mainly because he wanted to appeal to more American audiences, but also I feel like because of the history of what Cabrini Green is, there is a lot more to talk about in terms of what Candyman represents because of, again, like you said, the housing projects that were built and kind of left to rot by the city government and how crime moved into it, and but the funding never went into helping that poor community out until like eventually got torn down like a couple of years after the movie was released, I think, which is really sad and unfortunate because I remember like wasn't it like nicknamed the murder capital of the United States at one point, even though it never really was.
Oh well, it was always when you talk about the capital people
Mm-hmm.
getting killed. It was terrible, dude. You had
yeah.
gangs, separate gangs, in different buildings, just sniping each other across,
Mm-hmm.
sitting up in those buildings.
It really, yeah. Um, Cabrini. Also, while we're on that subject about Cabrini Green, like there was that one scene where they're walking into actual Cabrini Green, and you know those folks who are standing outside, like kind of guarding the doors and whatnot.
Uh-huh.
Those are actual gang members that they found. They just literally went. Yeah, they were like there and like we need some extras, and so they went into this to like there was a gang hanging around. And they were like, "Do you want to be in a movie?" And they're like, "Dude, yeah." So they just so whenever you see that movie, like, and those are actual gang members.
Wow.
In their actual
Yeah, I was
clothes.
gonna say authentic.
It is, yeah. And another thing about that is the fact that I believe their shooting, their van they were shooting in actually got shot, reportedly. Whether or not that's true or not, who knows? But it's another thing. And it's again, you can also by using this kind of see how Candyman himself is a representation of how the fear that people had towards Cabrini Green was kind of keeping it locked into a place, even if it was like just a rumor, even though it was like the hint of violence and stuff. It was this kind of fear that raptured around people's minds as well. And there is also another funny thing where, like, the only other movie really I can think of that was set in Cabrini Green is actually a TV show. And do you know what TV show it was? Justin and KP, I'm sure you will know immediately what it is.
Good times?
It is Good Times. Which is, talk about tonal shifts, am I right?
Well, to piggyback on that, Justin, do you remember New Jack City?
I'm not familiar with it personally.
Justin, you remember New Jack City?
Oh yeah, I remember people getting shot at New Jack opening.
Right. I didn't think about it till you guys were talking, but is it strange to me that I just put? It's absolutely not a horror movie, but it is the tale of an inner city building being consumed with violence and all of that, and they used the police department to try to show some form of hope. Whereas this movie, is that weird that I put those two together somehow?
No. You're talking about that same kind of urban decay and the being left to their own devices to figure out how to deal with it.
Right. Yeah. This is a kind of a much more. How funny is it that this is a more realistic take?
Oh yeah, much.
It is, yeah.
Strange.
But that was the first after the movie, where we introduce the setting. We see Virginia Madsen, we see like the old legend and stuff, and the Kingpin using the name. And then we have the second half, which is the Tony Todd show, which goes full Dracula. It goes full gothic romanticism.
Yeah, I like your reference to gothic because it's definitely a gothic tale. The emotional notes it hits, the gradual descent to madness, that kind of stuff is dead on.
Yeah. What did we have any other thoughts on like that whole tonal shift and how it moved that way and why we think it moved that way? if you think it had a reason at all.
Thought it was seamless.
Yeah. Uh, Jared, do you have any thoughts on that whole shift?
What I love the most about the shift is when Candyman first shows up, it's not in like a darkly lit room. It's just in like a parking garage in the middle of the day.
And
And
it's
there's an
still
element of that where
haunting because you hear that voice.
It's silhouetted in the sunlight.
it's weird because usually it would be, he'd be surrounded in darkness and you could barely see him, but it's just like you see his silhouette and you're just like, oh my god. And it's one of those times where it's like you're still in the quote real world, if that makes sense. You haven't like gotten into that yet, so when it just shows up blatantly right in the middle of the day, it's like, oh whoa.
Right.
That's
She's not in the
crazy.
shower. She's not in the shower. She's not in a mirror. She's not, you know what I mean, alone in a dark alley. It's a parking garage. So is it a little bit alone? Yes, but it is, like you said, it's so different from every other appearance first time of a monster, right?
Yes.
Yeah, and it really separates itself from, like, because it did come out in '92, which was like around the time that slashers were starting to go through a rebirth. It was right before New Nightmare and Scream and all that jazz. So technically, when people saw this, a lot of people did point to it to be a slasher movie, which, yeah, technically it is. But because of that whole transition and the way that it uses the madness and just takes these normal, oh, it's really nice environment here, and then just flipping it on its head because you just don't know where he is terrifying in many ways. But there's also just everything that is Tony Todd. We did say it a lot at the beginning, but this is where he really does start to shine. It really is just mwah, just that kind of. I don't know why he's so good, but he just nails the whole like the. I'm just my brain goes to like the thing where it looks like he's floating above Virginia Madsen, and just like telling her about like, the blade and the blood and like and he just seamlessly just slides from over to the side and underneath the thing where she's strapped to, and then just like immediately after that, I'm just like, oh, is anyone going to check under the bed? And when they actually go and check underneath there, it's like, oh, no one's actually there. Oh no.
There's a calmness to him.
Yeah. It's also a tragedy as well.
Of course. If there wasn't he wasn't so scary, he'd be almost peaceful, which makes him even scarier. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
It makes those moments of violence jump out.
Well, the guy flailing his arms around isn't the guy that scares you, right?
No.
He's gonna dunk on Freddy Krueger. All right.
The one contemplating. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know. And it really does add. Again, there are aspects of the character. I believe Tony Todd was the one who made the backstory for Candyman. I could be wrong. I have to look that up again. Where he came up with the son of a slave who fell in love with the one person and all this other stuff, which got him killed. Which again adds this other deeper layer of just tragedy to the character, where he's evil and he's terrifying, but there's this again that hint of sadness, and that just kind of deep. So when he starts doing his thing, like I like basically saying it was always you, Helen, and like doing this whole Dracula thing and doing that whole romanticizing of Helen, it really does kind of add to this kind of weird melancholy, I guess is the best way to put it. Where I don't know, because and I'll get into this in my final bit, but this is the only movie that I feel like is the direct spiritual successor to books and movies like Dracula, where it finally brings those old ideas to the modern times, even though it's 1992.
Well, not Dracula as a character, sure, but the character as the elegant evil, the evil that's tempting. You make no mistake about it, he's still evil.
Yeah.
But you see his point. You understand why he's doing this. He has a discernible motive other than just, I'm evil.
Yeah, do we have any other thoughts on like Candyman as a character other than just Tony Todd? Because I mean, don't get me wrong, we can talk
Well,
about Tony
yeah.
Todd all day, but
Uh,
One of my biggest takeaways was the kind of you hit on the urban legend part of the character, but he's also a tulpa, from Tibetan Buddhism. The idea that if you think that if you really believe in a person or a concept or an entity, you can create them in existence. Like if you get enough people together believing and they believe completely that has force,
Mhm.
and how he is even manipulating that for himself.
KP, you had some.
Cool.
well, the way he decides to bring her to, like, he goes through this love and it causes him terror, and so he puts in his way her in the exact spot he comes from when he meets her, drags her into the same abyss he's in.
Hmm.
That's stuff. I mean, that's good stuff.
Yeah, like I remember, like the thing where he's screaming while he's on fire is just one of those like, it's terrifying, but in a different kind of way that hits you kind of different. And also, there is the very end, which we should talk about, which is the almost literal passing of the torch from Candyman, from Daniel Robitaille, to Helen Lyle as the new urban legend that protects Cabrini Green, perhaps, or haunts it, who knows. What
She
did we
literally
think about
winds up
that?
him.
Yeah, she basically becomes him. Which, depending on how you read it, it can be partially problematic because of why is the white woman the white savior of this black community? But still, it does add to the urban legend thing, though. So,
I looked at it more as she's trapped in the same form he was trapped in.
mm-hmm.
Yeah, like a vampire. Again, she's been turned. She's Mina Harker.
She can never come back to the normal way of her life. She can never find peace again because she is forever trapped in the same proverbial hell that Candyman was once trapped in. Kind of deal.
Right.
Jared, what did you think about the ending?
I liked the ending a lot. It was vampiric in nature. Just yeah, again, like turning her. I thought it was neat. I thought it was just her becoming kind of trapped in the same way that he was tragic. Because again, it was the whole thing where it's like you felt for him and why he was in that situation,
Mm-hmm.
but perhaps not his actions. And then the same thing for Helen. It's just like Helen had everything like it sucks that she's stuck like this now. She tried her best until she died. She was trying to get the baby out.
And she did.
And she did, which was great.
And we'll see him in the new Candyman movie whenever that decides to come out.
And
oof.
her husband had it coming.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
That dude was a jerk.
Just
Yeah.
cheated on his wife. The worst human being.
What a jerk.
What the Oh, and when she came back, it's like, by the way, this paint sucks. I was like, you tell her. You tell him, Helen. Get him. Alright, so.
What you get for letting your kid design your house?
And even then, she was like toying around. She was getting tired of him by the end of it while he was mourning over Helen. It's like, man, clearly he's going through something. So I mean, I don't really sympathize with him a lot, but come on, man.
A little bit, yeah, go ahead.
Now we're gonna have a whole section on this podcast dedicated to was she right about the paint? No, I'm kidding. It's salmon. I mean, it's not even salmon, but it's salmon. And is there any good places that are painted like salmon?
No.
Salmon's fine if it's a part of an area.
Yeah, if it's a fish.
Come on, man. You're not walking in there.
Yeah, like I'm not going into a house painted salmon. It's not a thing like, oh, I don't like pink. It's like because it's salmon. It's like a bleaker pink. It feels sad. I can't remember.
Again, it has to have things to accent it. You know,
Yes,
you
it
can't
does.
just have, I don't know. Maybe if we had seen the wall painted and the room like furnished and they had some like nice touches,
Mm-hmm.
maybe.
And so
But
many
just
pictures to
standing,
cover the walls.
yeah.
I like how we're
If
having a whole
if they put
conversation.
wallpaper just right over it, I think I would have been able to accept it. But
A whole conversation on paint that I started as a joke.
uh, yeah, don't mess with interior design.
Don't mess with interior. It's a Rococo style.
Don't get me started.
All right. And with that, I think we're gonna start doing the end of the podcast, where right before we really say whether or not we believe it's a classic, I'm gonna get on my because I presented the movie today. I'm gonna get on the proverbial soapbox to give one last rallying cry to why I believe this is a classic. And as I said earlier, this movie is the only movie that I feel like is a proper spiritual successor to Dracula and stuff like this gothic romanticism a la like Frankenstein, or a little later than that Edgar Allan Poe. Like more so than any other horror film that I've seen, which tries to evoke that style. Because most of the time when I see films like that, it just kind of does it for lip service, and they nail all the little bits and pieces there, but it doesn't feel modern. It feels like it's just referencing these old books and these old classic things, which is not bad. But nothing about it really brings it to the forefront of what that how you can interpret that today until I felt like Candyman, which is what sets it apart from all these other slashers and all these other horror movies, because it really what sets it apart is that if it uses these themes and concepts that we've been talking about to really say something with it, like talk about urban legends, talk about where they come from, how we perceive them. It even touches little themes over here and there about systemic racism and all this stuff because of the setting of Cabrini Green, which is just cooked into just the setting. Admittedly, there are still some issues with the movie, like for example, some of the weird ways it talks about redlining, which I didn't really go into. But there is a really good video by Reed, called "Candyman Be My Victim" on YouTube. So if you have 30 minutes, check it out. It's a free plug right there. But it is really just such a powerful film that I can look over them because it is more than a slasher movie. It's more than a simple horror movie. It is a bloody gothic tragedy, 100% of the way, and it's why it's my own personal favorite horror film. But it's also why I feel like it should be discussed as one of the classics of the genre. Because whenever we talk about horror, we talk about things like The Thing, which we should, talk about Silence of the Lambs, which we should. But I feel like Candyman should be included in those, like, in the echelon of like classic horror movies. Whenever we talk about the genre in general, yeah, that is my horse. I now step down. Um, so I leave it up to the panel now. Do we believe it's a classic? I can let anyone jump in. Say.
I'll jump in because I feel like the other guys will have something better to say. I was when I was coming up, I remember that Hellraiser struck me in a way different than the other horror movies at the time,
Mm-hmm.
and this one it doesn't surprise me that it's the same guy writing
See, yeah.
putting it
Not the
in it.
same. It's not the same director, but it is this guy who wrote the original short story, and I believe he was a producer. So yes.
Right. And so, and again, I'm with you on it being a classic. It feels smart. I feel like the modern they try to do now with horror and suspense is more this than what we got with your Jason Voorhees and things like that, your classic monsters. If that makes sense. So I agree with you.
Mm-hmm.
I'm definitely on the classic side of this because again, Kevin brought some great points, and it really it tries to be more than just your trope horror film. I think that there's something to be said for intellectual horror in you know really trying to get under people's skin in a psychological way. I like the comparison to Hellraiser you made because I think that's a very Pinhead, for being such a weird character, still has that same kind of aesthetic.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I'm definitely on the classic side of it.
J. Rid, you are last on the panel.
I'm going with classic as well. and I do again want to give a special shout out to the score, adding a lot of the gothic flavor to the movie for me.
If you guys haven't seen hear the score, by the way, please look it up on YouTube. Please.
It's like it's organs, it's pianos, it's choirs harmonizing. It's very dramatic, and it really sets it off from other things from the time. Wow, that was a great description. Other horror movies that have soundtracks that aren't like that, and I think that really does add to the gothic vibe of the movie. So yes, classic.
Yeah, all right. We have all four of us agreeing once again. That's very nice. What do we? Okay, I know I'm gonna talk about our next week's or next episode's thing, but I do want to know what we think about when it comes to the new Candyman movie coming out, because it's going to be a sequel, not that doesn't reference Candyman 2 or 3, which is Day of the Dead or whatever those movies are. I didn't recommend those for a reason. They aren't great. They're not great. Tony Todd does great in them, but yeah, but that's because he's great. But I remember if you haven't seen it, I'll highly recommend that you watch it. There was this little animated short that the director of the new movie released. Her name is Nia DaCosta, who is very cool on Twitter. It was just about shadow puppets. They uses the actual original theme of Candyman while going over these acts of violence against African Americans with shadow puppets and using the theme, and it ends with the Candyman actual event of Daniel Robitaille, which we see in the second movie that we are alluded to in this one, which is him falling in love with the one woman that he paints and then getting chased down and his hand cut off. And it is one of the most haunting trailers I have ever seen. Have you guys checked that out?
I have not. I'll have to check it out.
It is terrifying. And from the way it looks like, because in the second trailer that I saw on TV Spot, they showed some more shadow puppets. I think that's the first couple minutes of the movie. Which, if it is, that's a great opening. That is a heck of a cold opening. I think I sent it to you, Jared. I don't know if KP you saw it.
I don't think I've seen it.
Mm.
I know I haven't seen it, and I don't know that my heart can take that right now.
I'm really
Not a
excited.
horror guy.
I wasn't really a horror guy until recently, so now that I'm on the horror train, I can't get off. Highly recommend you see that. I'm looking forward to the new movie because I feel like we're getting some of the original cast coming back for this one, and it takes place the main character Yaya, we talked about in last episode, who played Dr. Manhattan. He is actually going to be Anthony, little baby Anthony, all grown up.
Oh wow!
Oh yeah.
That's great.
And they have the actual mother. She's actually in the trailer for the new Candyman movie. If you look for her, she is in the movie. And I don't know if we're going to be getting I forgot his name, the kid with the hat. I don't know if he's going to be in the movie, but it'd be really cool if he did show up. And I think Virginia Madsen's also in it. I haven't heard about Tony Todd. He keeps playing around with my emotions. Anyway, really excited for that new movie. Maybe it will also be on a future podcast episode. Who knows? We'll find out. But next week, I am not going to be the one presenting a movie. Shocker, I know. Next week is going to be Jared. John Wick Jared is going to be presenting a movie. John Wick Jared, you want to say what the name of the movie is?
Well, the movie is Cobra, obvious. No, Little Shop of Horrors is what I want to go with.
The musical specifically, not the original, I'm assuming.
Yeah, the one with
Steve Martin, not Jack Nicholson.
Steve Martin and
good old Rick Moranis.
oh my god, Rick Moranis. Thank you. Oh my god, I can never get his name right, despite him being phenomenal. I love Rick Moranis.
Well, we definitely have something
yeah,
to look forward to then, definitely. Because Rick Moranis.
I love that movie, man.
Ooh,
it's great.
We're going to be talking about that and the many different cuts of it. Well, thank you all for stopping by. Thank you all for listening. Everyone say goodbye to everybody.
Bye.
Well, at the same time. Impressive. Well, thank you guys again for stopping by. And, do good. I have to come up with a proper ending to this. I swear to God.
Watch good movies.
Watch good movies, do good things, be good
Or
people,
don't.
or don't. Who cut? I don't. Who cares? Cut.